to celebrate life, Lois. Her life and ours and hers. I was honored to be given the opportunity to begin serving at Jenkins 6 years ago. And Lois was already there. And we do a service on Sunday afternoons, and we do a service on Thursday mornings. And there weren't many times she didn't come. And she loved the Lord. It just beamed from her. Her smile, she would light up a whole room. She had everything to be sorrowful about, yet she wasn't. She was full of joy, and peace, and hope. And King David said, "The Lord is my shepherd." Lois is as well. When he said, "I won't be in want," even if the end of my life is in a nursing home, and my physical limitations are so severe that I can't support myself, I'll trust the Lord forever. David said, "He makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside quiet waters." But he knew that the pastures weren't always green, and the waters weren't always calm. But he led us there too. David said, "You restore my soul," and that's every day, every morning. When you need help to get up out of bed again and get in your chair, begin to get around. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. That we honor him with the way we live. Kindness, friendship. And even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and we do all the days of our lives, and yet there, it's so close. It's all around us. Even before the virus and the pandemic. Roommates who pass away. The person across the hall who passes away. And the funeral homes come in and take a body away, and you see that's where you're spending the last part of your life. But the friends that I get to know there, and Lois included, have this courage and strength and this assurance that's not the end of their journey, that there's more yet to come. And they teach me every day courage and strength, what faith looks like when life is hard. We walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Fear is everywhere around us. This virus, for 9 months, it's been everywhere. Yet we don't need to fear the virus, and we don't need to fear the evil. The Lord is with us. And the thing that we're finding, as friends cross over to the other side, the worst thing that can happen to any of us is the Lord takes us home to paradise forever. We wouldn't want to cause that for anybody, so we wear our masks, and we distance. We wash our hands for other people. When David said, "Your rod and your staff, they comfort me," the rod to protect us, the staff to guide us. I wouldn't think a stroke would be an act of God's guidance. Sometimes those things are. My mom, she says it is what it is, and God is good, and there's no comments. Whatever it is we endure has a purpose. And it strengthens our spirit and strengthens our faith. It helps us to cling only to the Lord and nothing else. Must have been a day or two before she went home. The emergency crew came in. They were going to take her to the hospital. And I got to sit with her before she went. And as poorly as she was feeling and as hard as time she was having breathing, She had that smile. And she was okay. And then she came back, and the last couple of days were kind of tough with the breathing. But she had that smile. And she had that. How wonderful for us. To know that for us, because of him, we don't need to fear the evil or the valley of the shadow of death. Because even though he prepares a table before us in the presence of our enemies, and I think what David said was that sometimes God allows us to face our greatest fears. As I read what you guys wrote, she seemed to be so independent all of her life, and self-sufficient. And the last 11 years, it wasn't that way. But she learned a different strength. And by that strength, the Lord took her home. There in the presence of our enemies, the things we never thought we'd have to face. David said, you anoint my head with oil and my cup overflows. He was talking about God's grace. Your mom knew God's grace so well. 11 years. She saw it all the time. And roommates and friends, gathered with others. And David said, surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And I always think how wonderful that's a promise. All the days of our lives, every single day, God's loving goodness will be with us. When we get to the last day, Jesus told the young man next to him on the cross, he said, today you'll be with me in paradise. When we get to our last day, it's our best day. I'm sure that's where that last smile came from. To dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And she's there. And music?
This song that I'm going to be playing is called Just a Closer Walk with Thee, and it also speaks of God's grace and walking closer to Jesus. It's based on the passage James 4:8. Come close to God, and God will come close to you.
Not only was that beautiful, but you did it with your mask on. That's something. We wear a mask all day long there. And up until this week, there was those N95s. And by the end of the day, you can't breathe, let alone play a saxophone. And then I couldn't play a saxophone anymore. The scriptures that I think she lived out for us. This verse from Psalm 116, the fullness of that passage. Psalmist said, I love the Lord, for he heard my voice. He heard my cry for mercy. Imagine that was a prayer early on in all of that for her. And the psalmist said, because he turned his ear to me, I will call him as long as I live. Cords of death entangled me, the anguish of the grave came over me. I was overcome by distress and sorrow. But then I called in the name of the Lord. I said, Lord, save me. The psalmist said, the Lord is gracious and righteous. He heard and he answered. Our God is full of compassion. He protects the humble-hearted. When I was brought low, he saved me. So return to your rest, O my soul, for the Lord has been good to you. For you, Lord, have delivered my soul from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before the Lord, land of the living. And this afternoon she does, and she is. Psalmist said, I trust in the Lord. So what shall I return to the Lord for all his goodness to me? I will lift up the cup of salvation. I will call on the name of the Lord. I will fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his faithful servants. And the psalmist said, and Lois, as he took her home, truly I am your servant, Lord. I serve you just as my mother did. You have freed me from my chains. And she is free. Just sing with me, holy, holy, holy. And I won't sing into the microphone. We'll sing together. night before the cross, Jesus gave promises to his disciples. In John chapter 14, John recorded it this way. He said, Jesus said, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. He said, in my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. But I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And I do believe on that cross, 2,000 years ago, he prepared a cross for every one of us. And everybody who says, yes, Lord, is invited. But then he said, he goes and prepares a room for us. So one day I'm going to come back for you, and I'm going to take you so you can be with me where I am. And I think what a wonderful promise. What a wonderful place to be. We don't know where heaven is. Not way up in the sky someplace. Can't be very far away. Because I get to sit with friends on their journeys home. And they see what I can't see. And they reach out for a hand that I don't see. And it must just be a veil. Dimension we can't see from this side until we get real close. And those who are on their way home can see. And who would want to go to heaven if he wasn't there? Wherever he is, that's where paradise is. That's where heaven is. And that's where Lois is. You sing again, great is thy faithfulness. little bit later on that evening, Jesus told his disciples, he said, there's no greater love than a man lay down his life for his friends. And they watched him do that next day. And when they laid him in the tomb, they thought their hope was gone. The darkness that came over all the earth while he was on the cross. But he told them how many times he was going to rise again, and they should have all been waiting outside of the tomb. And only Mary Magdalene and the other ladies went. But he still loved every single one of us. We haven't always started with faith. I was 17 when my dad passed. I was angry with God for 20 years. Walked away from faith. Why he gathered me back in, I don't know. For Lois, such an active life for so long. And the stroke in the nursing home. Only 73 when she came to Jenkins, that's pretty young. I think I counted there were 8 or 9 health concerns when she came in. Over the years, it grew to 23. Who would choose that as the ending of your journey? Or to accept it with peace, with thanksgiving? Because that's what she did. When this was first asked if I would help with this, I thought of the passage in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, where somebody must have asked Solomon, so what's the purpose of life? You work hard for a whole lifetime and then you die. Where does it make sense? Solomon said, there's a time for everything under heaven. And what do we gain from all our work in a lifetime that ends in a nursing home for 11 years? Solomon said, look again. God has made everything beautiful in His time. He's put eternity in our hearts. We know there's something more than this. And what's important on this side of heaven is that we help one another, take care of our families and our neighbors and our communities so that everybody has the opportunity for food and clothing and to hear the good news that there's a God who loves them. But then I read what you wrote about all that Lois did in her lifetime, how she used to get down on the floor with the grandchildren and play games, and how she loved her family. When I was a little boy, I spent most of my days with my grandmother, and I don't ever remember my grandmother getting down on the floor. I think if she could have, she probably would have. But the thing I remember most all these years is my grandmother's love for me. When the Lord rescued me from a life apart from faith, partly through my brother Mark, who had cystic fibrosis, or through the testimony of my grandparents. This passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 seemed the most fitting for her of all. Again, it's what Jesus said that night, no greater love than a man lay down his life for his friends. Sometimes, times of war, that means laying down your life for your country. Sometimes it means getting up every day and going to work for your family. All the years of your life. This is what Paul said. So now I'm going to show you the most excellent way to live your life. He said, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but don't have love, I am just a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have a faith that can move mountains, I have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor, Surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. I guess of all that Lois brought to us at Jenkins, what's her love for us? For other residents, for staff, for you guys as her family. Love is patient, and love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. The stroke, all of that, took all the pride away. She was content. She was at peace with who she was. No need for pride anymore because she was humble in the face of the Lord. We need to be humble to be able to love. We need to learn to be patient because we're not always. We need to be kind because when we're thinking of ourselves, there's no love in that at all. Not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Seems our country has been missing the truth for so long. It always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes, always perseveres. That's how she spent those last years of her life. Love never fails. Where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, we pass away. But we know in part, we prophesy in part. But when perfection comes, and I don't think perfection comes until the Lord takes us by the hand and takes us home and our time is done on this side, we get the crown of righteousness that Paul would talk about. We know in part, we prophesy in part, but when perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When she smiled at me that last time, before she closed her eyes, the Lord was present. There was peace that had come, and love. It's the bottom of all that for all of us. The end of this says, when I became grown, I put childish ways behind me. Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. Now these three remain. I think often of our residents, so many of the folks that come to us, they come at the time of their life they never chose. You get a little room with a little bed, a little closet, a little chair. Have an opportunity to find out what's important. And I think what they discover is all those things we consider important, the possessions we have, they're really not all that important at all anyway. It's this relationship with this wonderful God. What David said, I will not be in want, because I have exactly what I need. Lord, that you know I need. Faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these, the gift of love. A smile that lights up the room. You guys would like to share?
I'm going to share just some memories of Grandma. Like many grandparents, Grandma loved to spoil her grandkids. Every time she visited our family, she'd pick up a half-gallon, or on occasion a full gallon, of chocolate milk for us. Chocolate milk was something our family rarely purchased, so we knew when Grandma came to visit, it meant a special treat. When I was 10, my parents agreed to purchase a puppy, at my pleading. Sunny, a white fluff ball of Bichon and Cocker Spaniel mix, became very much so my dog. But upon our very first family trip that he couldn't come along with us, Grandma took care of him. And he took to her so much that after that trip, he knew the sound of her dark red Chevy S10 pickup truck when she pulled in. If Sunny was my dog first, he was Grandma's dog second. And oh, how he loved that time with her. Grandma was one of those people that paid attention when you said you liked something and would make every effort to buy things for you she thought you'd like, sometimes going mistakenly overboard. One of the funniest moments of that quality came when my dad had nonchalantly stated that he liked cream soda. He didn't mean that he loved it, just that he liked it every once in a while, but all my grandmother heard was, "I love cream soda." So on her next trip to visit us, she brought him, I believe it was 6 12-packs of it was a lot of cream soda, in which we particularly took a long time to work through, and I think eventually we just ended up giving the rest of it away.
Well, she brought 2 more pieces on subsequent trips.
So later on, she brought more. Every Thanksgiving, I like to curl up and watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on NBC. My favorite performances are from the Broadway shows, and my most favorite are by the Rockettes, the New York City Rockettes. She knew this, and so when the Rockettes brought their Christmas show to Minneapolis, she plunked down a hefty amount of cash so we could go see the show together. That was one great quality that she did pay attention to of things we liked. She actually later found an old Time magazine as a journalist. She knows I'm interested in journalism, and that one was featuring the Rockettes. Grandma loved a fun car. While she had her Chevy S10, she also owned an old maroon convertible. I don't even remember the make or model, but I remember thinking it was so cool Grandma had a convertible. On my 10th birthday, I believe it was, Grandma visited and lent my parents her convertible for the day so we could use it as the car we drove to my birthday party location. It was me, 2 of my friends, and the wind in our hair in the back seat, and I thought to myself, how cool is that? I still think that. When I was a teen, our family was visiting my grandmother and family in Grand Forks. My mom and I had to go out shopping for a dress to wear to a wedding that summer. And as with many teenagers, my idea of dresses I wanted did not align with the dresses my mom wanted for me. It was proving impossible to find anything that fit well and that I liked and that Mom also approved of. I think we found a dress, but I came home angry and crying, and I'd imagine my mom did as well. As I stomped through the door, I started venting to Grandma about how horrible of a mom is and that she just wants to ruin my life, and then burst into another round of sobs. She held me, and I can remember her saying, "She just wants what's best for you. She's trying to help you." And with any other person, that would have angered me even more, but somehow it helped calm me down. And by the way, she was right. Grandma loved traveling both domestically and internationally, but had a special place in her heart for Lake Superior. Anytime she was by or on that icy cold but crystal clear water, she was content. That love for both adventure and Lake Superior is something she shared with me, and it was something that I got to share with her in her later years at Jenkins when I would go to Lake Superior and I would come home and show her videos and pictures of my trips. Since her time at Jenkins, my time with Grandma has consisted of me regaling to her those latest adventures and often misadventures. For instance, my latest round of completely backpedaling and falling completely into the ocean fully clothed, which she laughed at hysterically. It also just consisted of holding her hand while watching the endless Hallmark Channel's endless cheesy movies or the British sitcom Keeping Up Appearances. Sometimes it meant breaking her out of the nursing home to enjoy the community's festive events, whether the homecoming parade, Kai-I, the Christmas lighted parade and tree lighting ceremony, or a night of music by the city band in which Naomi plays her saxophone. And in her last months, my time with her included picking up a DQ Blizzard with permission from the Jenkins nursing staff and a bouquet of flowers for our outside socially distant visits. When I last saw her in September, I honestly did not think that was the last time I was going to see her, but it was. But those those last few minutes at Jenkins meant all the world to me. I'm going to share one story of Jenkins, a story at Jenkins that I just thought was so funny. Grandma was a spitfire who was still sharp as a tack through her later years, and a prankster who kept the nurses on their toes, which is probably why they loved her so much. The residents all had spots around the dinner table. A lady at my grandmother's table had been put on dietary restrictions of just half a glass of water per meal, I believe. A decision she was not happy about and verbalized to everyone at the table. After weeks of complaints, the residents around the table were growing annoyed, including my grandmother. Finally, the day came where this particular resident was able to get a full glass of water. My grandmother was seated to the table early on that day, and seeing the glass full of water, she took it and poured a little more into everyone else's cup, bringing that resident's water glass back down to about half full. So you can imagine everyone chuckling, and later, the resident's horror when she found the glass. She made sure to tell the dietary aide that she was supposed to have a full glass that day, who I'm sure was confused given the glass was full just moments earlier. And from my understanding, it was a nurse and the dietary aide who, upon Grandma's sly grin, who figured that out, but Mom's shaking her head, maybe I have that wrong.
No, they confessed.
Oh, she confessed that was what had happened. I do have to say that the nursing staff served and cared for my grandma like she was their own, and for that I am extremely grateful, as well to Nicole, her hairdresser, who we love dearly, who glammed Grandma up every time she went to go get her locks trimmed. And while there are many who loved my grandma, in her last years of life, I want to take this moment to honor my mother and my father for their care of her in the last 11 and a half years. For my mother who has faithfully visited her, helping her brush her teeth at night and prepare for bed. You have both been the epitome of sacrifice and grace, and of loving and caring for her in her old age, so thank you.
I should have gone first because now my eyes are leaking. I have a few words that I'd like to share. First, on behalf of the family, my mom's sister, my brothers who were unable to be here, myself, my mother's children-in-law, her daughters-in-law that she loved dearly, and her favorite son-in-law. It was a game they played, and they played it well. They made sure that each other knew, this is my favorite mother-in-law, and this is my favorite son-in-law. And for those of you who don't know, he was her only son-in-law, but it didn't seem to matter. So we'd like to thank you for being with us today, for joining, whether you're here in person or for those of you who have joined us through the streaming video. Sorting through Mom's things has brought an appreciation to me of how much my mother loved her children. There are times we doubted that a lot, but I have found so many things that only a mother would keep because she loved. She was a champion for the challenges we faced in our life. Behind us, things that we didn't know until years later, where she was there championing our cause. But she was also a big fan of our successes. She was proud of us all, and she treasured the time she spent with us. Mom was a very active mother and grandmother, and I remember hot summer days when Mom would pile all 5 of us kids into the station wagon, and also each of us was allowed to bring along a friend. So you had 5 children, 5 friends, and Mom. And we would head off to the lake for a day of cooling off in the water. Mom was a Minnesota State High School Athletic Association gymnastics judge for girls, and she was also a snowmobile safety instructor, having never really driven one herself. But that didn't seem to matter. She completed all the safety courses and knew what to look for, and she was able to help youth receive their safety certification as a snowmobile driver. She did not compete for speed or style, but she was an active downhill skier. We used to joke that Mom's frame was Go Snow. She was a member of the Honeywell Ski Club, and she was president of the Minnesota Ski Council. She later became interested in sailing and her passion for Lake Superior. And she bought a sailboat, the Rainbow Chaser, with some friends, and they spent their weekends hanging out together on the water on Lake Superior. She was a charter sailboat captain and was able to officially lead sailboat trips. Most of all, as Hannah said, and Scott hinted at, my mother was an active grandmother. There are some grandmas who are meant for snuggling, and that's what they do best. But my mom was an engaging kind, and she earned the right to snuggle at those moments when the grandchildren chose to, but mostly she loved to get down and play with them. She was seen on the slopes, downhill skiing with her grandchildren at the age of 60. Now, being around that age, I can tell you I'm not interested in that anymore, and I probably should sell my skis and my boots. But most of all, she celebrated with her grandchildren. She loved them all. She was so proud of them. She marveled, she celebrated their accomplishments, and she admired them as unique individuals. She was Grandma. Her stroke failed to quench her inner spirit and her sense of humor, and her sense of humor, as Hannah alluded, snuck up on the nurses from time to time, the one with the water at the meal. And what Hannah didn't say is that all the residents at the table had to do was look at each other throughout the meal and they would burst into laughter. And one of the kitchen staff later admitted, I never did find out what was so funny. But another time my mother pretended to faint in front of the nurse, which set the nurse in a panic mode until she snuck around to the front of Mom's wheelchair and saw the smirk escaping from those lips. I would take Mom out to have her hair done, and her stylist, Nicole, would treat her like she was the Queen of Sheba. She loved on her, doted on her, massaged her scalp extra long in the shampoo. She cut, styled, and then she would add a touch of color or a touch of glitter to Mom's hair when she was done. We would return to Jenkins for what I like to call the Lois Parade, because most of her friends at Jenkins knew that Lois had gone out to have her hair done. And they flocked to admire and compliment her on her hair. Mom always seemed to sit a little taller in her chair on those days. But the best Lois Parade ever was the day we returned from our trip to Wisconsin for Hans's wedding. With a huge bouquet of roses in her lap from the wedding reception and an inner glow of excitement from the events, we returned to the admiration of the other residents. You see, Lois had gone on a trip. Not many residents ever traveled for anything, and so they admired her picture. They oohed and awed over her roses, her wedding attire, and they were so genuinely happy for her. She also, on that trip, had gotten a little box of chocolates, and being a diabetic, she knew. But she hid them underneath a blanket so no one could find them and take them away. And each day, she would sneak a chocolate until they were all gone. The one thing that her health challenges did not change was her love for her friends or her family. She was so excited when she heard the voices of her loved ones, or she saw their faces on the video calls. It was the highlight of any day, and she beamed from ear to ear. Live visits were exciting times, except for me, because I was a regular attender, or I should say a regular offender, and Mom often refused to nap, and she didn't want to miss out on any of the fun or the time spent with her loved ones. There were times that Mom would fall asleep with her head on your shoulders, and that was so sweet. Letters and cards from her loved ones were treasured. They were displayed for all to see, and I was not allowed to remove them or toss them after she had read them, or after they'd been up on display for every 2 years. You know, we just added this year's card to last year's. Didn't matter. I couldn't take them down. In the past 8 months of COVID restrictions, the Jenkins staff lovingly stepped in to fill as many of the voids in Mom's life as they could. They loved her until her final breath. Mom loved a good party and was usually at the center of any social gathering. She had an infectious smile, and she offered a hand of friendship to everyone she met. So Mom, this day is for you. You are again the center of the party, and you are loved.
Would you sing with me again? What a friend we have in Jesus. And as we said, right before the cross, he said, no greater love. And the man laid down his life for his friends. No greater love to live our lives for our families and our friends.
Privilege to care.
September. We lost 8 friends there in October. We lost 29 there in November. And this past Sunday, for the first time, we were able to gather in the dining rooms to share our prayer and devotions, our worships on Sunday. And there were 5 of us, because 19 others who used to join us there were on the other side. And I imagine the music is beautiful, and the peace, so deep. What a wonderful time of the year, the season of Advent and Christmas. Talk about hope, we talk about joy, we talk about peace, talk about love. Your mom knew all of those really well. Would you pray with me? Father, we thank you. We thank you for the gift of life you give to each of us. You form us in our mother's wombs before we even know we're coming. And we know our birthdays, but you knew that before we did. And every breath and every heartbeat for a lifetime. And the gift of our families and friends, those we've loved and been loved by. And especially this afternoon, Lois. Our love for each of us, our love for her. May she remain in our memories till we see her again. Because there is a reunion one day. For that we give you thanks also. So together we pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Forever and ever. That's begun for her. Thank you.